Welcome back to another edition of Movement is a Lifestyle. I'm the host, Ben Reuter. Today's guest is somebody we had planned to interview before COVID started, and then COVID hit, and there were delays with that and delays with scheduling. And with our ethos with Movement is a Lifestyle, people think, well, lifestyle humans, but I think today's guest will agree with me. It's not only the humans, but the pets you have. Today, we're fortunate enough to have Meredith Wille. She is with Steel City Canine Rehabilitation and Sports Medicine. And for those of you out there who have dogs, you probably go, there's rehab for dogs? Or I've used rehab for dogs. I first met Meredith. I was going to use her for a lab who has since passed away, who tore her cranial cruciate ligament. Unfortunately, before we could schedule rehab, I had to put her down due to epilepsy complications. But we had the opportunity with our podcast, FitLabPGH, to see what she did in her facility and to find out more about what canine rehab is and how she got started in it. So Meredith, thanks for taking time to talk to Movement as a Lifestyle and come down to the South Hills.
Sure, yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I guess the first question a lot of people are probably going to want to understand or ask is, what the heck is canine rehabilitation and how does somebody get into it? I mean, I know personally that there are some physical therapists who get specialized training for it, and I actually talked to one once who said, I like dogs better than humans. That's how I got into it. How did you get into canine rehabilitation? And actually before that, what is canine rehabilitation?
So canine rehabilitation, and we say rehabilitation in veterinary medicine versus physical therapy because human medicine actually owns the term physical therapy. So we are not legally allowed to call it physical therapy. So we term it as rehabilitation. And what it is really helping dogs to be able to recover from surgery or an injury or managing something that is debilitating, whether that be osteoarthritis or, like you learned, a torn ligament or muscle grouping. There are many and varied ways that we can help dogs to move better, feel better. We don't just simply have to shrug our shoulders anymore and, say, well, they're getting old or that's a bummer. That we have modalities and things that might be non-pharmaceutical. Pharmaceuticals still play a role, but we do have a lot of non-pharmaceutical options that can help dogs.
And I know in the human realm in Pennsylvania, there is direct access where somebody can see a physical therapist for a set period of time without a recommendation from a doctor. With canine rehabilitation, I know most people probably don't have pet insurance. I'm probably the exception to the rule because of past experiences, and I'm a huge fan of it. But I guess my first question to follow up on that would be, number one, does somebody need a recommendation from a vet for canine rehabilitation? And the second thing is, how do people typically pay for it? Is there insurance, or do they just say, I love my dog and I'm going to keep her or him around as long as possible, even if I have to spend a little more money than I planned?
So those are great questions and they do come up pretty frequently. Our clinic is owned by a veterinarian, so we do have to be under the direction of a veterinarian. So I follow the laws and the ways of coming up with a treatment plan by conferring with our veterinarian and making sure also the patients, if they are referred in, they must be referred by a veterinarian. Owners can call us. We do still have to go through the legalities of an exam. Sometimes too, we will get things that might need a little bit more workup or information, so we send them back to their regular vet with recommendations of things that might help us answer a few more questions before we can kind of proceed on with a treatment plan. So we are clearly under the direction of a veterinarian. We're owned by a vet that's Dr. Brian Silvis. And he oversees everything that we do in our clinic. He's not always on the premises. However, we are always in touch with him and communicate about our patients. As far as paying, that's also quite varied. We do actually get quite a bit of insurance. It is becoming a little more of a way for people to cover expenses for their pets. You definitely need to investigate the insurance companies because there are different policies. You probably know a lot about this already. There's different policies, though, within each grouping or overseeing company. And sometimes different policies do not cover rehab. Some do. Some only cover in-clinic rehab, not at-home therapies. So there's lots of different kind of loopholes, typical of insurance, I guess.
And it really sounds like it doesn't differ that much from human insurance, where everything you just described is the same thing most of us have probably experienced with human insurance.
Yes. Yeah, it really is. It's becoming more and more in line, I think, with a lot of the human health insurance as far as what's covered, what's not covered, questions to ask. But it really is actually quite nice. I do have quite a few. We do a lot with competition dogs. And a lot of those dogs do have insurance on them, and the owners do make sure that the insurance policies that they have do cover rehabilitation, also preventative medicine. That's a huge part of what we do as well. So making sure that the dogs are fit and healthy, and hopefully that we can prevent injuries from happening. And some of the insurance companies will even cover those costs as well. So, but it's a lot of research on the owner's part.
And I know when we interviewed you years ago and we went up to your clinic, you actually had a dog up there that, if I remember correctly, was your own personal dog that you had adopted, who was obese, who literally had difficulty moving around because of her size. And I know from following on social media, I haven't followed recently, but she dropped a significant amount of weight. For people who have dogs, and I think you can probably comment on this more, many dogs probably don't get enough activity, and they get lots of treats because dogs have that look that they give you, and you feel guilty if you don't give them something.
Yes.
How important is it, when you mentioned the preventative, do you have vets or the vet that you work with who refers patients or dogs to you because they're obese and said, Meredith, we want you to work? Because typically you don't think of losing weight as being rehabilitation, but for people who are involved in physical activity, whether it's for dogs or for humans, it can be very beneficial down the line with arthritis and other things. So do you see obese dogs?
We do, actually. The dog you're referring to is named Bertha. I ended up adopting Bertha. She was a foster fail. So she still lives with me. She's doing okay. Age and her chronic obesity prior to me having her has taken a toll on her. So she doesn't get around as well as she used to, but she's still with me, and she's still thin. So,
and how much weight did she lose? How big was Bertha? Was a beagle? Is that correct?
She's a puggle.
A puggle.
Yeah. When I got her from the shelter, she was 63 pounds. Her current weight is 26 and a half. Last time I weighed her. Yeah.
So she lost over half her weight.
Yes. Yeah.
And I know one of the things with humans is people gradually gain weight over their lifespan and they don't really realize it. What was the cause, if you know, what caused her to be so large?
We actually don't know. She was confiscated by animal control. So unfortunately, her history is a little lost as far as how she got to be that big. She's not shy about getting food. So I'm sure that had a piece of it as far as why she gained so much weight. But
and how long did it take to go from 63 pounds to 26 pounds?
Almost a year. It was about 11 months as far as how long it took her to lose that weight. But once we got it off, and even kind of once she started losing enough that she was capable of being more active, it just kind of peeled off for her. So that was actually pretty nice because she needed surgery on one of her legs because she had ruptured tendons due to her obesity, And that was probably our biggest game changer with her, was being able to increase the function of that leg so that then she really could get around much better. But we do, and it turned out she really was great for our clinic because people saw the success with her. We got a lot of referrals for overweight and obese pets to come in and get on plans so that they could also lose weight. So we do get a lot. We get people who they want a different diet plan, so we help them come up with what's appropriate for their pet. And then we start out with very slow movements, relatively easy things. Even when the dogs don't walk well because of injuries secondary to the obesity, or they just simply physically can't get up and get around, we still come up with a very nice fitness plan for them. So they're moving something, they're doing something at home just to start rolling in the right direction, no pun intended. But we want them just starting to move and be able to get some of that weight off. There was a study done, I think it was 2017 or 18, in England on the efficacy of weight loss versus pharmaceuticals. The conclusion of the study was that a 5% weight loss in a dog is equivalent to a 7-day course of a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. So when you just think about it and, say an 80-pound dog, 5% weight loss, it's 4 pounds. Like it's very attainable to help that dog. You just start with 4 pounds, on a dog that size, and that equates to that dog being on a 7-day course of medications that might have an effect on their liver and their kidneys and things like that, like a long-term effect. And the benefits are just tremendous.
And I would think one of those things for dogs that are prone to hip dysplasia, or dogs as they get older with arthritis, and sometimes they can't get up, and the vet may say, well, you might want to try this anti-inflammatory or that anti-inflammatory. And you're saying something as simple as gentle exercise, easy exercise, maybe instead of, and I am not a dog dietitian, but maybe instead of the normal food stuff, 2/3 of the food stuff in green beans or something that's low calorie, which the dogs are going to say, well, this is food.
Yep.
That can have a tremendous effect without having to have the complications.
Yes. Oh yeah. It really is, it's shocking how just a very simple weight loss that these dogs, they feel better, they move better. And there's pretty clear evidence. We do have quite a few studies that do tell us that healthier weight dogs do live upwards of 2+ years longer than your slightly overweight, and then certainly pushing into overweight and obese dogs that do live a significantly less amount of time.
And I know anybody who follows FitLab Pittsburgh with our movement tip and lifestyle hack videos that we put out every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, most of them take place with dogs. And if people who watch it, we have a black lab, she's 9. And when she was about 4, when she was at the vet, she weighed about 63 pounds, which doesn't sound like a lot of weight. And I asked the vet, I said, is she overweight? And he said, yes. I said, what do I do? He said, cut her food in half. Well, I cut her food in half, and at her last vet visit, I mean, this was a gradual thing, she was 53 pounds. And of course, every year when they go to the vet, I ask them, I say, how are my dogs? Do they need to lose weight? Do they need to gain weight? And most people who would look at my dogs would say they're too skinny, but they're at a healthy athletic weight. They go out, they get 20 to 22 miles of walking at their pace each day. We've worked up to that.
Sure.
And I know, obviously, as an exercise physiologist, I'm into that. I recognize the importance of exercise. And the dog that I mentioned that I had to put down with epilepsy, she was walking 20 miles literally up until she tore her cranial cruciate at her pace. And I could see the enjoyment of the dogs. And I don't know, you could maybe comment on this with the dogs you work with. Do they like to move? Have you ever had a dog that just is like, well, I don't want to move. I don't want to do these exercises with you. And you have to literally bribe them with healthy treats? Or to most dogs, is it finding out what they like to do? Because I know a lot of people will say, well, my dog just doesn't like to move.
So that's a really interesting kind of question, comment, discussion to have, because it is actually one of the things that is a huge part of our job is finding the motivation for each particular dog. Everybody's a little bit different, and I do get the comment frequently from clients when we do want to or need to use treats to get the dog to do something, and some people, they don't want to use treats or they don't want to encourage the dog. My comment frequently is, I don't go to work without the anticipation of receiving a paycheck. So I don't really think it's wrong to pay your dog for wanting to do something, because there certainly are dogs who they lack a little bit of motivation to want to get up and go and do something. Labs generally are a breed who thoroughly enjoy getting up, running and walking for kind of no sustainable reward.
You can say they're goofballs.
Okay,
you can trick
that's
them.
fine. Fair enough. Fair enough. I have sighthounds. That's really my primary breed, and Bertha. Bertha, she's a great example. There's no way that dog is doing something without a food reward. It's not going to happen. There's just no way.
So for maybe people who they know their dog needs to lose a little bit of weight, maybe they're not at the stage where they need to come see a vet tech or a veterinarian, what are some suggestions, provided they don't have food allergies, et cetera, for a healthy treat? For you and me, we could say, well, it could be carrot sticks, or it could even be a chocolate chip cookie in moderation. What about for dogs? Because you can literally go into the pet food store and there is about as many types of dog treats as there are breakfast cereals for humans.
Yeah, that's very true. I think sometimes getting a little creative. There also is really not much wrong with using, say you feed kibble. There's really nothing wrong with using a portion of their kibble as their encouragement and reward for asking them to do low-level exercises. So for example, say you feed the dog 3/4 of a cup of food for its meal, take a 1/4 cup out, save it, put it off to the side, feed them their 1/2 cup. Now you have a 1/4 cup of kibble that you can use as their reward for doing whatever it is. That's one way that you're not adding any calories to their meal. There certainly are other things, a variety of fresh fruits and vegetables. Definitely do your research though on what's appropriate for dogs and not. We use Cheerios all the time.
It's actually all labs that I've had 4 labs total. Mm-hmm. All of them have been taught to sit in basic obedience training with a handful of Cheerios.
Yes. Yeah, Cheerios are great. I am not endorsed by General Mills, but Cheerios are a wonderful snack to be able to give. It's approximately, we looked it up, I think it's 10 Cheerios equals 3 calories. So when you're calorie counting for the dog, you can easily measure out X number of calories in Cheerios, and that's what the dog is allotted in snacks for the day. So, because like Bertha, when she was on her weight loss program, I always allotted 20 to 25 calories in treats per day for her. So I mixed it up, what she could have. There are a lot of low-calorie treats out there, so sometimes you just do need to do a little bit of research on what you can find for them. But Cheerios work great.
And I know my dogs now go bonkers over snap peas.
Yes, snap peas are a good one.
And I think maybe to some extent it's the crunch of both the Cheerios and the snap peas.
Yes, I do believe, I really do. I believe in the crunch factor on treats, because also their Charlie Bears are another one. And when Charlie Bears, they came out with a new crunch treat versus their original ones, those are way more popular. And I think it's a crunch factor. I really do.
What other things do you see dogs for rehabilitation? I mean, as you said, usually you get a recommendation or a referral from a veterinary physician. What would be examples of dogs that you would see other than a need to lose weight or to improve their fitness?
Well, we see all different kinds. There are certainly tendinopathies that dogs can get. I mean, I had a dog about a year ago, a young German Shepherd that was out playing ball with its owner, and the dog actually ran into a cable wire that nobody seemed to notice, including the dog, until he hit it. When the dog did it, it actually cut right across the front of the dog. There were no visible injuries, so thankfully it was more of an impact, but what happened is that it actually strained both biceps tendons in the dog that turned into a tendinopathy. And so we treated that dog, who was able to go back to playing ball, frisbee, dock diving, lots of activities. So tendinopathies are something that we see. A lot of times it's because they're not a obvious or visual injury. Tendinopathies can be very challenging. So a lot of those are what we deal with because they're lumped into this soft tissue category. You probably see and hear a lot of that as well in human. Oh, it's soft tissue. Just go figure it out. So,
and the dogs can't talk and tell you.
Yeah, they can't. So that is a lot. We use our hands a lot for narrowing it down, helping to solve issues or solutions as to the location of the injury. And then we have a wide variety of modalities that we offer. We have laser therapy, we have PEMF therapy, we have shockwave therapy, in addition to what is most people know and refer to us for is the underwater treadmill. But we have a lot of other modalities, certainly just our hands, so being able to do myofascial release. Again, a lot of those have to deal with the tendinopathies. I just had a dog yesterday, a young dog, that unfortunately fell and fractured a growth plate months ago. And as the dog has recovered and the growth plates are now starting to fuse, has developed a tendinopathy. And so we're trying to work through that. That's a challenge because growth plates are still open, so we can't do some of our modalities. So that's where fitness and massage comes in very handy for healing a dog like that. So we see lots of different things. Arthritis is certainly one that a lot of people refer to us because either the dog is already maxed out on medications or the dog is just not a candidate for medications. Sometimes older dogs with a wide variety of health problems, they just simply can't tolerate medications. So that's also where we come in with non-pharmaceutical options.
And I know at your facility, if you walk in, it looks maybe a little bit different, but not that much different than a high-performance physical therapy clinic. Mm-hmm. And I know where I was first attracted to it is the fact that you had an underwater treadmill. Talk a little bit about that, because there may be people out here who are not athletic or they don't do athletic things, but they have a dog. Maybe the dog has some arthritis and it's not getting around as well, but boy, mentally the dog is vibrant and they could have another 7 or 8 years around. What's the underwater treadmill and what type of dog is a candidate for it?
So our underwater treadmill, it is kind of the flashy piece of equipment that we have. It's really not that flashy, but it is what most people think of when they think of canine therapy, canine rehabilitation. People almost automatically think of an underwater treadmill. It's very beneficial. Extremely beneficial. And some of the reasons why it's so beneficial is because we control everything that happens. So sometimes when people are like, my dog can't walk, that's walking, what's the difference? Well, the big difference is we fill it with water. So we take the weight off of the joints. So there really is not that much pressure left on the joints. So the dogs have a little more free movement. But we control the depth of the water. So depending on what we want to do with the dog, we want it a little higher, they become a little more buoyant, or we want to increase tension, we lower the water level. We control the speed of the treadmill. So we get the dogs to start walking, and then we can vary the speed of it. Sometimes we increase it, sometimes we decrease it, depending again on what our goal is for the dog. Also, we control the temperature of the water. We generally keep ours at about 90 degrees, so which is warm. However, the core body temperature of a dog is around 100 to 102. So it's not quite up to body temperature, but it would be like us kind of submerging in somewhere around like an 85 degree pool. So you think about how relaxing that is.
And I know for humans, a competition pool is in the 70 degree temperature, and you can always tell when you go someplace to swim if they have a silver sneakers or arthritis program for senior citizens, because the pool is usually about 84 or 85 degrees, which is uncomfortable for long-term high performance. But if you're putting a dog or a human into 75 degree water, and maybe they don't like water, maybe they're not movement oriented, or they just get cold, they're just like, yeah, I'm not motivated. Where I could imagine if you warm it up, it's almost like a warm whirlpool or hot tub.
Yes. Yeah, we usually refer to our underwater treadmill as our fancy canine hot tub because it's what it feels like, and that in and of itself is beneficial for the dogs. So we are a little cautious when we have competition dogs, because we don't want to use that as their sole modality for conditioning. We do want people to do other things, and that is actually a big reason. We see a lot of dock diving dogs, and we do have to caution, because the pools that those dogs are generally jumping into are about 70 degrees, sometimes cooler than that. So we do have to be a little bit cautious, because you don't want the dogs used to such warm water, and then they won't be jumping.
We've been talking with Meredith Wille. She is with Steel City Rehabilitation and Sports Medicine. That's a mouthful. She's a licensed veterinary technician, and she's also a certified canine rehabilitation practitioner, as well as a certified canine fitness trainer. You'll have info for her practice or her facility. And if you've got a dog that you want to keep around as long as possible, maybe they're not getting around as well as they are, or you think maybe they need a fitness evaluation, then I would highly recommend it. Meredith, thanks for taking time to talk to movement as a lifestyle, not just for humans, but also our four-legged friends too.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.